Nvidia is about to change how AI agents run to forever. So today is the day Jensen Huang is about to walk onto the stage at S&P Center in San Jose, the same arena where the San Jose Sharks play hockey in front of 30,000 people from 190 countries. And the things he's about to announce or has already started announcing, depending on when you're watching this, are going to change how you work, how your company works, and what AI can actually do for you right now. I want to talk to you about all of it today. I want to break down what GTC 2026 actually means, which is Nvidia's conference just about to drop, not just for tech nerds, not just for investors, but for regular people who know how this changes their lives or want to know, because it does change your life. And the people who understand this first are going to be way ahead. So let's start with what drops. So GTC 2026 kicked off today, right? And this is happening in front of 30,000 people packed across 10 venues across downtown San Jose. This is not a small tech conference. This is the biggest AI event on the planet right now. People are calling it the Woodstock of AI, the Super Bowl of tech. And that's not hype. That's because whatever Jensen Huang announced this week tends to become the foundation that the whole industry builds on for the next 12 months. So what is he going to say? Three things, three huge things. And I'm going to walk you through every single one today. The first is Claude. The second is Vera Rubin chips. And the third thing is Grok. And all three of them connect to the same idea that NVIDIA isn't just a chip company anymore. They're trying to become the company that powers every single AI agent on Earth. Now, let's start with Claude because this is the one that affects you the most directly. NVIDIA has been planning to launch an open source platform for AI agents called Claude. They've been building it quietly. And before the keynote even started, they were already pitching it to some of the biggest companies on the planet. NVIDIA reached out to Salesforce, Cisco, Google, Adobe, and CrowdStrike, seeking partnerships ahead of the launch. Now, let me explain exactly what it is, because the name sounds technical, but the idea is really simple. You know how you can hire a real person to help you at work, like an assistant who answers emails, schedules meetings, pulls data, writes reports? Well, Claude is the software that lets companies deploy AI to do all of that, not just for one person, for every single employee at the company at once. It's actually designed to be like enterprise level software, kind of similar to something like OpenClaw, but it's designed for enterprise, right? So it's designed to enable companies to deploy AI agents that carry out tasks on behalf of their employees, processing data, managing workflows, and implementing multi-step instructions with limited human oversight. Read that again, limited human oversight. That means the AI doesn't just for example, respond to you, it actually does the thing. You don't have to babysit it anymore. You tell it what you need and it figures out the steps to actually get there. Now, here's what makes this different from every other AI agent platform out there. It's free, it's open source, and it'll work on any hardware, not just NVIDIA chips. Bear in mind, this is not 100% confirmed yet. This is what's expected to announce. But Namaclaw is designed to let enterprise companies send out AI agents to carry out tasks on behalf of their employees. So the platform comes with built-in security and privacy tools. It's also hardware agnostic, meaning companies will be able to run it regardless of whether their products are built on NVIDIA chips, right? And that last part is massive. NVIDIA has spent years locking developers into their CUDA software ecosystem. Once you build on NVIDIA's tools, switching is painful. That's been a huge part of how they dominate the market. Now they're voluntarily giving that up with Nemoclaw. They're saying, we don't care what chips you're running, use our AI agent platform, build your AI workforce on us. And why would they do that? Because they're thinking bigger. The logic is exactly the same as what Meta did with their Llama AI models, right? Meta gave away the models for free. And that sounds crazy for a company that wants to make money. But what happened? Everybody started building on Llama. Everybody started running Llama workloads. And those workloads need chips to run on. Who makes the best chips? Meta still mostly ends up spending money on NVIDIA hardware anyway. Right? NVIDIA's open source approach mirrors Meta's playbook with Llama, which turbocharged open source AI development whilst boosting the demand for the hardware to run it. Give away the software, sell more chips, control the ecosystem. That's a game that Jensen Huang is playing, and he's been playing it for 30 years. The man does not make moves without thinking 10 steps ahead. Now, let me tell you why Namaclaw matters specifically right now, because of the timing right here. When OpenClaw, the open source local agent framework that went viral in early 2026 before its creator, Peter Steinberger, was hired by OpenAI, was found to have an unsecured database to let anyone impersonate any agent on the platform. Several large technology companies, including Meta, moved to ban it from corporate machines entirely. So there was this amazing agent platform. People loved it. OpenClaw was everywhere. Even Jensen Huang reportedly called it the most important software release probably ever. And then it blew up because of a massive security hole. Big companies said no. IT departments said no. It was too risky, right? Nemaclaw is NVIDIA's answer to that problem. Nemaclaw is being positioned as the enterprise safe answer to that chaos. Think of it this way: OpenClaw was like a fast car with no seatbelts and no airbags. Great for the racetrack, but for your company's insurance, probably not going to cover it, right? Nemaclaw is the same car, the same speed, but now with a full safety cage, seatbelts, airbags, and a black box. Now the corporate lawyers say yes. The IT department says okay, and now it actually gets deployed at scale. That's what we're looking at with the release of Nemaclaw and its potential. Now, the agentic AI market is projected to reach $28 billion by 2027, $28 billion in 1 year. And Nemaclaw is NVIDIA's play to own as much of that as possible. And here's where it gets even more interesting. OpenClaw itself was at GTC. So Peter Steinberger, the creator of OpenClaw, is on stage at GTC discussing the rise of agentic systems. He's planning to be there. The guy whose platform blew up and got banned by Meta is now speaking at the world's biggest AI conference right next to the NVIDIA team that's building the safer version of this product. That's not awkward. That's the AI industry in 2026. Everything moves fast. Everything, the best ideas, even the messy ones, end up building the next generation of tools. What does this actually mean for you? Well, if you run a business, and I don't care if it's a small business or a huge company, you're going to be able to deploy AI agents that work for you within the next 12 months if you haven't already. So if you've not tested out OpenClaw, for example, this is a really powerful agent that you can set up once, tell it what it's supposed to do, then it goes off and does it every day whilst you sleep. And with stuff like the potential of Nemaclaw, if it's free, if it's open source, you're not going to need a huge budget to access it. You're going to need the knowledge to set it up and then make it work for your specific situation. And that's why I keep saying this over and over. The people who learn how to work are with AI agents right now are going to be untouchable in the next few years, right? Not because technology will have passed them by, but because they'll have 2 years of actual practice whilst everyone else is still trying to figure out what an AI agent even is, right? So let's talk about the hardware, because if Nemaclaw is the car, the Vera Rubin chip is the engine that makes the whole thing possible. Each Rubin's GPU delivers 50 PF LOPS of inference performance using MVF P4, a 5x improvement over Blackwell GB200. I need to translate that for you because PF flops sounds like something a physicist made up, right? 1 petaflop means the computer could do 1,000 trillion math operations per second. 50 petaflops means 50,000 trillion operations per second in a single chip. That's almost an incomprehensible amount of computing power sitting in a box you can install inside a data center, right? And the Rubin chip is 5 times faster than what NVIDIA released this year. The Blackwell chip, which already seemed impossibly powerful when it came out, is now being outrun by its successor. And the thing that matters most to most people isn't the raw speed power number, it's what the speed translation and how it translates into, right? So the full NVL72 rack promises 10x lower cost per token at inference compared to Blackwell. Now, bear in mind, this again needs to be announced, it needs to be confirmed, but this is what we're expecting from the conference today. 10 times lower cost, that means running AI, asking it questions, having it do the work, deploying it in your products, costs 10 times less on Rubin hardware than it did on Blackwell. And Blackwell was already cheaper than Hopper. The cost of AI keeps falling off a cliff every year. A year ago, running a sophisticated AI agent in your business would cost a lot of money, right? You needed serious infrastructure or you paid big cloud bills. 6 months from now, when Rubin hardware starts rolling out to cloud providers, the cost of running AI agents is going to be so low that budget will stop being the main barrier. Now, let me tell you who's already lined up to get Rubin hardware. Among the first cloud providers to deploy via Rubin-based instances in 2026 will be AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft, and Oracle Cloud, as well as NVIDIA cloud partners CoreWeave, Lambda, Nebius, and Nscale. Microsoft will deploy NVIDIA via Rubin NVL72 rack scale systems as part of next generation AI data centers. And on the AI Labs side, AI Labs including Anthropic, Meta, OpenAI, Mistral, and XAI are all signed up on um, the trial to train on Rubin hardware. Every single major AI lab, every single major cloud provider, all committed to Vera Rubin. That means every AI model you use, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Meta's Llama, is going to be running on this hardware within the next year. And because the hardware is so much faster and cheaper, those models are going to get smarter and cost less to use. That virtual cycle is what's driving this whole AI wave forward. Cheaper hardware enables smarter models. Smarter models creates new use cases. New use cases creates demand for more hardware. Nvidia and Thinking Labs announced a multi-year strategic partnership to deploy at least 1 gigawatt of next generation Nvidia Vera Rubin systems to support Thinking Machines frontier model training. 1 gigawatt. That's the power consumption of a mid-sized city being dedicated to training AI models. We're building AI infrastructure at a scale that has no historical precedent. This is not a trend, it's a new industrial era. As Jensen Huang himself said, AI is no longer a single breakthrough or application. It is essential infrastructure. Every company will use it. Every nation will build it, right? Every company, every nation, not just the tech giants, not just startups, every company. If you're sitting there thinking that AI doesn't really apply to your industry, your job, your business, I'd push back on that hard because that's exactly what people said about the internet in 1997. It's for tech people, it's for young people. My customers don't use it. And then 5 years later, every business that didn't have a website was bleeding customers to the ones that did. AI is moving faster than the internet did. And that's not me being dramatic. The data says that. Now, let's talk about Grok because this is a part of the story that almost nobody is covering correctly. Nvidia spent $20 billion in December to license Grok's intellectual property and hire key talent, including founder Jonathan Ross, who previously helped Google create TPUs. $20 billion, not to buy Grok outright, to license their technology. That's a very specific, very strategic move. And here's why Grok matters so much. NVIDIA's regular GPUs, the ones that power everything from ChatGPT to your company's AI tools, are incredibly powerful for training models and for processing massive batch workloads. But they have a weak spot. When someone asks an AI a question and they need an answer right now, instantly in real time, that's called inference. And doing inference super fast at a very low cost for millions of simultaneous users is actually a different problem than what GPUs were originally designed for. Grok design chips, it calls language processing units or LPUs that are designed for inferencing or running AI models. The company claims its processors can run large language and other AI models up to 10 times more efficiently than GPUs. 10 times more efficiently for the specific use case of running AI in real time. So NVIDIA looked at this and said, we need that because the whole AI industry is shifting from training models to running them. Every company that built a model is now trying to deploy it. That means inference is becoming the dominant workload. And Grok had cracked a piece of the code that NVIDIA hadn't. So they spent $20 billion to bring that technology in-house, not to shut Grok down, to absorb what Grok made great and combine it with NVIDIA and what it already does. Jensen Huang has already said that the Grok agreement will pay and play a similar role to Mellanox, indicating that LPUs will help NVIDIA complement workload stages. The Mellanox acquisition is a great paradigm. NVIDIA basically bought Mellanox in 2020 for $7 billion to get their networking technology. At the same time, people thought it was expensive and weird. 2 years later, that networking technology was a core part of why NVIDIA could build the massive AI data centers that everybody needed. The Grok deal was the same play. You're going to understand it fully in 18 months when you see what it unlocks. The reason all of this matters for regular people is something that I want you to sit with for a minute. When AI inference gets 10 times faster and 10 times cheaper, which is what the combination of Vera Rubin and Grok technology is pointing towards, the kinds of things AI agents can do changes dramatically. Right now, AI agents are a little slow sometimes. You know, you give them a complex task and they take a minute. They process things in steps. That's fine for a lot of use cases, but for the most powerful use cases, think, for example, AI that's monitoring your business in real time, catching problems before they happen, automatically responding to customer issues in milliseconds, you need speed. You need inference that's as fast as a snap. And that's what the combination of Vera Rubin hardware and Grok's LPU technology is building toward. Jensen Huang teased this at GTC is teased several new chips the world has never seen before, with rumors pointing to an inference-focused processor incorporating technology from Grok, targeting 10 times lower inference costs and specialized agentic workloads. World-surprising chips, Jensen Huang's words. He doesn't say things like that lightly. Now, let me zoom out for a second because I want to connect all three of these pieces together. Nemoklaw, Via Rubin, and Grok, because they're not separate stories, they're one story. Nvidia has spent the last decade dominating AI hardware, right? They make the chips to train AI models. They make hundreds of billions of dollars doing that. But the hardware game is getting more competitive. AMD is catching up. Google, Amazon, and Meta are all building their own custom chips. Analysts think that Nvidia will begin to see share loss starting in 2027 once in-house ASIC programs gain some scale, especially in the inference market. Nvidia sees this coming. They've been seeing it coming for years. So the move they're going to make is to move up the stack, right? Don't just make the chips, make the software platform that everyone builds on. Make the agent framework that every company deploys. Make the inference technology that every AI runs on. Make yourself so embedded in the full stack that even if someone uses different hardware, no problem, they're still in NVIDIA's ecosystem. This is vertical integration through open source. Give away the software, open the ecosystem, sell more chips. That's the play, and it's a brilliant play. Because even if AMD takes 10% off the chip market, if Nemoklaw becomes the default way that enterprises deploy AI agents, NVIDIA still wins. If the Grok inference chip becomes the standard for real-time AI, then NVIDIA still wins. They're not just playing one game, they're playing every game simultaneously. Now, let me come back to what this means for you, the real-world impact, because I can talk all day about chips and software frameworks, but the thing I really want you to understand is how this lands in your actual life. The AI Profit Boarding, which is the community I run and where I help people actually learn how to apply this stuff, exists because there's a massive gap between what's being announced at conferences like GTC and what regular people know how to do it, right? And how to implement it. So most people watching the GTC keynote are developers and investors. They speak the language, they know what a petaflop means, they understand what open source implies for enterprise adoption. But the majority of business owners, creators and marketers and professionals watching this have no idea how to translate what Jensen Huang just announces into actual changes in how they work. That's the gap I feel. And this week, that gap is particularly wide because what's happening at GTC isn't incremental. It's not a slightly better version of last year. It's a whole new layer of the stack being built. If you're a business owner, here's the direct implication. Within the next 6 to 12 months, every major software tool you use, your CRM, your email platform, your project management tool, your customer service software, is going to have an AI agent capability built in. That's what Nemoklaw's partnerships with Salesforce, Cisco, Google, and Adobe potentially mean. Those companies will potentially bake agent capabilities directly into products you already pay for. The question isn't whether AI agents are coming to your business, they are. The question is whether you're the person who sets them up and makes them work for your goals, or whether you're the person who gets handed a half-configured tool and doesn't know what to do with it. And the difference in outcome between those two people is enormous. If you're a manager or team leader, here's your direct implication. Your team is about to get a lot smaller in headcount and a lot more powerful in output. Not because people will be fired overnight, but because the tools available to each individual on your team are going to multiply their productivity so dramatically that you'll be able to do more with the same number of people or the same output with fewer people. You need to understand this now so that you can be the leader who builds the high output team rather than the leader who asks the same number of people to produce the same output and wonders why your competitors are running circles around you. If you're an individual contributor, someone who works in a company doing marketing, sales, operations, customer service, writing, or analysis, here's your direct implication. The most secure version of your career for the next 10 years is not ignoring AI and hoping your specific skills stay relevant. The most secure version is becoming the person on your team who actually knows how to use these agent tools to do more in less time. The people who add AI agent skills to whatever they already do become twice as valuable. The people who don't are going to find that their role is being redefined around them. And I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it because it's real and because the people who act on it now get a head start that compounds over time. Now, let me get back to what else is happening at GTC because there's a lot more. The pre-game show will feature the CEOs of Perplexity, LangChain, Mistral, Skilled AI, and Open Evidence. And think about who those people are for a second. Perplexity is the AI search engine that millions of people use instead of Google, right? LangChain is a framework that most AI developers use to build agent applications. Mistral is a European open source AI lab that's been putting out some incredible models. All of them were there and we'll be there to kick off Jensen Huang's biggest week of the year. That tells you something about where the power is concentrated in AI right now. It tells you that Nvidia is the gravitational center of it. Every major AI company needs to be in that room. That's just where the industry is. GTC sessions this week will dig into how Nematron Super integrates with NemaClaw and how it runs on Vera Rubin software. The Nematron 3 Super is Nvidia's own AI model, and they launched it just before GTC, and it's specifically built for agentic AI workloads. Now, let me explain what Nematron 3 Super is, because it matters way more than people realize, right? Nematron Super 3 is a 120 billion parameter hybrid Mamba transformer mixture of experts model with 12 billion parameters active at inference time and a 1 million token context window. That sounds like a lot of jargon. Let me break it down simply, right? 120 billion parameters is the total size of the model, right? Now, you want to think of parameters like the total amount of stuff the AI has learned. The more parameters, the more it knows. But here's the smart part. Only 12 billion of those are active at any given time. The model routes each question to the most relevant specialized experts inside it, rather than activating all 120 billion for every single request. So imagine if you had a company with thousands of specialized employees. Instead of asking all of them to work on every single project, you have a smart routing system that figures out which 3 or 4 people are best suited for each specific task and only activates them, right? You get the combined knowledge of thousands of experts, but the cost and speed of just using 3 or 4. That's what mixture of expert architecture does. And it's why Nematron 3 Super achieves up to 5 times higher throughput and twice the accuracy of the previous generation Nematron Super model. 5 times faster, twice as accurate, and it connects directly to other potential tools like NemaClaw to power the agent it deploys. NVIDIA isn't just selling you the hardware, they're not just giving you the agent platform, they're also giving you the AI brain that powers the agents. It's a complete package from the chip to the software to the model. That's the full stack that Jensen Huang has been talking about for years, and GTC 2026 is a moment where it all comes together in one coherent vision. And then there's the stuff at GTC that people don't talk about as much, but it's maybe just as mind-bending if you think about the long-term game, right? So GCC 2026 includes 2 dedicated physical AI days covering robotics, autonomous vehicles, industrial AI, and digital twins. Physical AI, that's a term NVIDIA uses for AI that operates in the physical world, not just answering questions on a screen, actually controlling robots, driving cars, managing industrial equipment, simulating real-world physics to train AI systems. The highlight on the robotics side is Isaac Groot N1.6, NVIDIA's vision language action model for humanoid robots. Like its autonomous vehicle counterpart, Alpamayo 1, Groot N1.6 applies chain of thought reasoning to physical control, allowing robots to reason through novel situations step by step rather than pattern match against training data. Chain of thought reasoning in a robot. Let me sit with that for a second. Until recently, robots were not very smart in a very specific way. They could do repetitive tasks incredibly well. Pick this up, move it there, move, weld this seam. But the moment something unexpected happened, the part was in a slightly different position, for example, or the bolt was the wrong size, or the thing that was supposed to be there wasn't, the robot failed. It just couldn't adapt. Now, chain of thought reasoning changes that. The robot can now think through the problem. It can assess the situation, reason through what's different, and figure out a new approach, not just pattern matching, actually thinking. Combine that with the speed improvements from Vera Rubin hardware, the agent deployment framework from NemaClaw, and the model improvements from Nematron 3, and you can start to see where this is all going. The AI agent that manages your business software in 2025 starts to look a lot like the robotic system that manages physical operations for 2027. And the line between digital AI agents and physical AI agents is going to blur over the next few years. And NVIDIA is positioning itself to own both sides of that line. Disney is presenting a session at GTC called Disney's Robotic Characters from the Screen to Reality via Physical AI. And Disney is at a chip conference now, talking about robots. That's a headline in itself. That's how fast physical AI is moving into mainstream applications. If Disney is putting AI-powered physical characters in their theme parks, and I believe that's exactly what that potentially could be about, then the public's acceptance and understanding of physical AI is going to accelerate dramatically. Because the best way to normalize something is to put it in a place where 30 million people a year visit. Now, let me talk about the money side of this, because some of you are investors. Some of you are business owners making capital allocation decisions, and all of you should understand the economic scale of what's happening. Nvidia's Q4 fiscal 2026 results showed total revenue of $68.13 billion, a 73.2% increase from the same quarter a year earlier. Adjusted EPS climbed from 82% from the year ago value. The company's data center business surged to 62.3 billion, rising 75% year over year. $68 billion in one quarter. The data center business, which means AI chips, was 62 billion of that. So 68 billion was the increase in one quarter, and AI chips is 62 billion of that. So 91% of Nvidia's revenue comes from selling AI hardware, and that hardware is growing at 75% per year. For context, there are very few companies in the history of business that have sustained 75% annual revenue growth at that scale. Most companies would love to grow 10% a year at that scale, right? Nvidia is growing at 75% at $68 billion a quarter. So the main thing to understand this, the underlying business story, more AI workloads, cheaper hardware driving more demand, software layer expansion capturing more of the value chain is about as clear as the business gets, right? And this is really changing the way everything is going. And this is how things are changing. You can see how Nvidia is going to dominate because we're at a sort of electricity moment for AI right now. The conference is one of the marker points where people look back and say, that's when it became obvious. And I don't want you to miss this moment. That's why I do this every day, right? That's why the AI profitable exists. Because there's a real gap between people who understand this enough to act on it and people who are watching from the sidelines waiting for it to become more obvious. And the gap in results between those two groups is growing every single month. You don't need to understand petaflops to benefit from this. You don't need to know what a mixture of experts model is. You don't need to understand everything about chips. What you need is a clear plan for how you're going to start using AI agents in your work, in your business, in your creative process, and a community of people who are doing the same thing and sharing what's working. And that's what the AI Profit Boardroom is, right? If you've been on the fence about joining, the week of GTC 2026 is as good a moment as any to make the call, because the world Jensen Huang is describing, the one where AI is infrastructure, where every company has AI agents, where physical AI is operating in the real world, that world doesn't appear instantly on a Tuesday afternoon. It gets built one announcement, one deployment, one business at a time. And the people who start learning how to navigate it now are the ones positioned to succeed when it arrives in full. So the fact that you're here watching this, learning this, thinking about this, that really puts you ahead of most people. The next step is applying it, starting somewhere, picking one process, one workflow, one part of your work, and figuring out how an AI agent could do it better or faster. I would start there, then the next one, then the next one. By the time Nemaclaw is widely deployed and Vera Rubin hardware is running your AI tools, you'll have a year of practice that nobody can take away from you. That's the game. And this week at GTC 2026, you got significantly more real. I'll see you on the next one. If you haven't already, check out the AI Profit Boarding link in the comments description, or just go to the AIprofitboarding.com to check it out. Claude just hit number one on the App Store, not for a day, not because of a sale or a viral moment. Number one, because a company with $380 billion valuation locked the United States government and looked them straight in the eyes and said no to a $200 million contract and refused to break down. And the public responded by downloading Claude in record numbers. Let that sink in. An AI company banned by the White House, right? Got called a national security risk, got threatened with a law that hasn't been invoked since World War II, and their response doubled down, sued the Pentagon, and gained over 1.5 million new users in a week. That's not a PR stunt. That is not a lucky break. This is what happens when a company actually means what it says. And right now, in 2026, Anthropic is doing something that almost no technical company has ever done. They are winning on every single front at the same time. I want to walk you through all of it because most people are only catching one piece of this story. They see the Pentagon drama, or they hear about the new models, or maybe they've noticed that Claude is suddenly showing up everywhere. But when you zoom out and you look at everything Anthropic has shipped, every stand they've taken, every number they've hit in just the first few months of 2026 alone is genuinely one of the most remarkable runs in history. And here's why it matters to you. If you're a business owner, a creator, a marketer, or anyone trying to build something, grow something, or stay competitive, what Anthropic is doing right now is not background noise. It is a map of where everything is going. And the people who understand it early are the ones who are going to have a massive advantage over everyone who doesn't. So let's start at the beginning of this year and work forward because 2026 has been absolutely relentless. In January, Anthropic launches Claude Cowork. This is the one I think most people still don't fully understand. Cowork is not a chatbot. It's not something you type a question into and get an answer back from. Cowork is Claude sitting on your computer, looking at actual files and doing actual work whilst you go do something else. Think about what that means. You show Claude a folder, you say, turn those scattered notes into a report, you walk away, Claude makes a plan, implements it, loops you in when it needs something and delivers a finished result. Not a draft, not bullet points, a finished thing. In Cowork, Claude completes work with much more agency than you'd see in a regular conversation. Once you set up a task, Claude will make a plan and steadily complete it whilst looping you in on what it's up to. That's not a feature. That's a shift in what AI even is. We went from AI can answer questions to AI can do your job whilst you're at lunch. And that happened in January. And here's the part most people are sleeping on. Cowork can sort your downloads folder. It can read results and build a spreadsheet. It can take a pile of notes and write a full draft report. It can reorganize files. It can create new ones. These are tasks that actual humans get paid to do. And now one monthly subscription can do all of them automatically whilst you're not even looking at your computer. I keep saying this to people and they look at me like I'm exaggerating. I'm not. This is real and it's live right now. Then February arrived, right? Bear in mind, we're only, less than 3-4 months into the year. And Anthropic shipped so fast that it felt like a different company every single week. Claude Opus drops on February the 5th. Anthropic officially launched Claude Opus 4.6, a serious leap forward, their first major model release of the year, with some genuinely impressive capabilities. The headline feature is a 1 million token context window. If that means nothing to you, here's what it means in plain English. Imagine you could hand someone every single document your entire company has ever produced, every report, every email thread, every strategy deck, every meeting note, and they could read all of it, remember all of it, and then answer questions about any of it without ever getting confused or forgetting something from page 300. That is what 1 million tokens means in practice. And it's an AI with a photographic memory for your entire business. Opus 4.6 improves on its predecessor's coding skills. It plans more carefully, sustains agentic tasks for longer, operates more reliably in larger code bases, and has better code review and debugging skills. And the performance numbers are wild. On GDP Val AA, which measures economically valuable knowledge work tasks, Opus 4.6 outperforms GPT 5.2 by approximately 144 ELO points. On the finance agent benchmark, Claude Opus 4.6 holds the top spot. It comes with a remarkable 14.5 hour task completion time horizon, the longest of any AI model as of February 2026, 14 and a half hours. One AI working on one task without stopping for a nearly full workday. That is not a chatbot, that's an employee. February the 5th also brought new add-ons for PowerPoint. So Claude is now available as an add-in in PowerPoint, and they updated Claude in Excel so it uses Opus 4.6 and supports native Excel operations such as pivot table editing and conditional formatting. This is Claude living inside the tools that hundreds of millions of people use every single day. Not a separate app you have to switch to, not a browser tab you have to open, right inside your spreadsheet, right inside your deck, doing the work inside the tool. Then they pushed it further. They improved the Claude for Excel and Claude for PowerPoint add-ins so they can now share the full context of your conversation. So every action Claude takes in one application is informed by everything that's happened in the other. Your Excel and your PowerPoint are now talking to each other through Claude. The AI that's helping you build your financial model also know what's in the presentation you're building from that model. That is not a nice to have. That is a fundamentally different way of working. February the 13th, Claude Sonnet 4.6 launches. Anthropic released Claude Sonnet 4.6 on February the 17th, 2026, the most capable Sonnet model to date. Now available as the default model on free and pro plans, Claude Code and Claude Cowork. Pricing remains unchanged at $3 to $15 per million tokens, with a 1 million token context window in beta. Here's why that matters. Pricing unchanged, but they made a model massively better. They did not raise the price. In most industries, when you make something dramatically better, you would charge more for it. Anthropic made the best version of their everyday model and kept it at the same price. Developers preferred 4.6 Sonnet over Sonnet 4.5, roughly 70% of the time, whilst 59% preferred it to Opus 4.5. The everyday model is now beating the previous flagship. Think about that. The model achieves a human level computer use for spreadsheet navigation and multi step web forms with 94% accuracy on the PACE insurance benchmark for computer use tasks, human level on real tasks, real spreadsheets, real web forms, not a lab test, not a curated benchmark, tasks that actual office workers do every single day. Then you got February the 20th, Claude Code security launches. This one got overshadowed by everything else happening, but it's genuinely jaw dropping. Anthropic launched Claude Code security on February the 20th, 2026, an AI powered capability for detecting software vulnerabilities and suggesting patches, now available as a limited research preview. Here's what it found. Using Claude Opus 4.6, Anthropic discovered over 500 vulnerabilities in production open source code bases that remained undetected for decades despite expert review. 500 in code bases that human experts have been looking at for years. Decades in some cases. The AI found problems that trained professionals missed. This is not Claude being marginally better at a task. This is Claude doing something humans simply were not doing at a scale humans simply could not operate at. On the 24th, Anthropic releases version 3.0 of their responsible scaling policy, the voluntary framework for making sure advanced AI doesn't end civilization. That's a real thing they actually work on. And they published it publicly with third-party review, while simultaneously shipping more features than most companies do in 2 years. Then February the 25th, you've got Anthropic acquiring Percept. Anthropic announced on February the 25th, 2026, its acquisition of Percept, a startup focused on solving hard perception and interaction problems in AI systems to enhance Claude's computer use capabilities. Computer use, AI that can look at a screen, understand what it's seeing, and actually click things, move the mouse, fill in forms, navigate websites. This is AI that can use a computer the way a person uses a computer, right? And Anthropic just bought the team that is the best in the world at making that work. Since late 2024, Claude Sonnet models have improved from under 15% to 72.5% performance on OS World, a computer use evaluation benchmark. Sonnet 4.6 now approaches human level performance on tasks like navigating spreadsheets and completing web forms, enabling Claude to handle multi step tasks within live applications and solve problems impossible with code alone. 15% to 72.5% in a few months. That's not a trend line. That is a phase change. And then came the Pentagon story. And this is where things get pretty cinematic. In July 2025, Anthropic signed a $200 million contract with the Pentagon. The contract was signed with full knowledge that included two specific restrictions. Claude would not be used for mass domestic surveillance of American citizens and would not be used to power fully autonomous weapons. These were not last-minute additions hidden in fine print. The Pentagon agreed to them, and the operation proceeded normally under those terms for months. So far, so normal. A company has a government contract, the contract has terms, everyone agreed, done. Then in January 2026, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a memo. He wanted all Pentagon AI contracts to use standard any lawful use language. For most AI companies, Google, OpenAI, XAI, this is no problem. Their contracts didn't have Anthropic specific restrictions. For Anthropic, the new language directly contradicted the two safeguards their contract always carried, right? Dario Amodi, the CEO of Anthropic, said Anthropic understands that the Pentagon, not private companies, makes military decisions, but in a narrow set of cases, we believe can undermine rather than defend democratic values. He also said use cases like mass surveillance and autonomous weapons are outside the bounds of what today's technology can safely and reliably do. Hegseth gave a deadline, dropped the restrictions to lose a contract, and possibly get labeled a national security risk. Usually when a government threatens a company like this, the company folds, right? They find a way to say yes whilst technically saying yes. They issue a statement about ongoing dialogue. They quietly give in. Anthropic actually just said no. The contract language, this is their words, by the way, the contract language we received overnight from the Department of War made virtually no progress on preventing Claude's use for mass surveillance of Americans or in fully autonomous weapons, Anthropic said. New language framed as compromise was paired with legalese that would allow those safeguards to be disregarded at will. Dario Amodi said the Pentagon's threats do not change our position. We cannot, in good conscience, accede to their request. And then it escalated really fast. The Trump administration on February the 27th ordered federal agencies and military contractors to halt business with Anthropic after the company refused to let the Pentagon use its technology without restrictions. Trump posted on Truth Social calling it a disastrous mistake. The Pentagon started asking companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin to assess their exposure to Anthropic. Hegseth labeled Anthropic a supply chain risk, a designation normally reserved for companies tied to foreign adversaries. And then something unexpected happened. Within 24 hours of the news breaking, Anthropic's Claude climbed to #1 position on the US App Store, displacing ChatGPT. More than 1.5 million users claimed they were taking action through the Quit GPT movement. A Reddit thread urging people to cancel and delete ChatGPT crossed 33,000 upvotes and kept climbing. The government tried to herd them, and instead the public rewarded them. OpenAI struck a deal with the Pentagon just hours after the Trump administration's order. The contrast was immediate and brutal. Sam Altman had publicly said he shared Anthropic's position on restricting military uses of AI. Hours later, his company signed the exact deal Anthropic refused, right? The public noticed, and people are not stupid. They see what the sequence means. Now, I want to be clear about something because I'm not making a political argument. I'm not telling you who was right or wrong. You can make your own judgments on that. What I am telling you is that a company showed you exactly what it means when they're under maximum pressure and who they are, right? And the market responded, the public responded, the numbers responded. So Anthropic reports that free plan users are up 60% since the start of the year, whilst paid and pro and max users have doubled. Right? Free users are up 60%, paid users doubled during a government ban, during a supply chain risk designation, during a public feud with the White House, whilst being called a national security threat. That is not a company losing, that's a company winning, right? And they didn't stop there. Right in the middle of the Pentagon crisis, they kept shipping, they kept giving things away because this is what a company that actually has long term vision looks like. Anthropic extended persistent memory to Claude's free tier, removing a feature that previously required a $20 per month subscription. Memory free for everyone. For those who don't know what this means, here's a simplified version. Before this, every time you open up Claude, you had no idea who you were, right? You'd have to explain your job, your project, your preferences, your context every single time. Every conversation was a blank slate. That was deeply annoying and also a huge reason people kept going back to ChatGPT because ChatGPT had memory on the free plan. Now Claude has it too, and they went further. Anthropic launched a conversation import tool to let ChatGPT users migrate their history to Claude without starting from scratch. They built a tool specifically designed to make it easy to leave ChatGPT. You copy a prompt, you paste it into ChatGPT, ChatGPT spits out all your memories and preferences, and then you paste those into Claude. And suddenly Claude knows everything about you that ChatGPT knew. Everything you've ever told it, every preference, every project, your entire AI history ported over in 5 minutes. That's an extraordinarily aggressive move. That's a company that is not playing defense. As of now, Claude is the top free iOS app in the App Store, a spot normally held by ChatGPT. Last month, Anthropic took advantage of ChatGPT's decision to start displaying ads for free users, promising to keep Claude ad free. Anthropic then added new features for free users, including options for compaction, creating files, using connectors, and accessing skills. Let me say that again. ChatGPT announced they were adding ads, and Anthropic's response was to announce they would never run ads, ever. And they published a full essay explaining why. The argument was simple: advertising turns the AI against the user. An AI that serves advertisers cannot fully serve the person it's talking to. Those two things are in conflict. So Anthropic chose the user, and then they gave away more free stuff. Skills, connectors, file creation, compaction, things that used to cost $20 a month, they gave away for free. Here's what that pattern looks like when you zoom out. Every time a computer charges more, Anthropic charges the same or less. Every time a competitor pulls a feature behind a paywall, Anthropic opens one up. Every time a competitor aligns with power, Anthropic holds the line. This is not accidental, this is a strategy and it's working really well. Anthropic is simultaneously facing intense pressure to justify its massive $380 billion valuation, supported by large institutional and strategic investors, whilst it races to stay on the cutting edge of model development. $30 billion raised $380 billion valuation, the second largest private tech fundraise ever. And instead of using that to lock features behind paywalls and monetize everything in sight, they are giving things away and going against some of the decisions by the government. This is a bet. Anthropic is betting that the way to win long term is to be the company people trust, the company that does not sell out, the company that the public wants to win. And right now, that bet is paying off in ways that no spreadsheet could have ever predicted. So let me walk you through the whole picture of what Anthropic has actually shipped since January, because when you see it all at once, it's genuinely remarkable. Claude Cowork, free plan upgrades across the board. Claude Opus 4.6 with a 1 million token context window. Claude Haiku 4.5. Claude Sonnet 4.6. Claude Code Security. Claude Code Review. Voice mode in Claude Code. Claude Code Desktop Preview. Claude integrations for PowerPoint and Excel. Cross-document context between Excel and PowerPoint. Industry plugins for investment banking, HR, private equity, wealth management and design. New co-work integrations and connectors, the Claude Marketplace, Skills API launch, memory for free users with memory export, inline visualizations in chat, the Anthropic Institute, the partner network with a $100 million commitment. That's not a list of features. That is the construction of entire ecosystem built in less than 3 months. Now compare that to what most people think of when they think about AI tools. They think about ChatGPT, they think about the thing that used to write an email or summarize a PDF. They think it's a clever assistant, a search engine that talks back, but that framing is already out of date, right? The AI the Anthropic is shipping in 2026 is an AI that works, that sits in your tools, it remembers you, that can take a folder of files and produce a report whilst you go for a walk. It's not a future version of technology, it is the current version available today at a price that is actively being produced, right? So that's basically it. I mean, it's absolutely insane what they've released this year. They're really creating more updates. That is the 2026 story so far for Claude, and we're only in March. Bear in mind, there's 9 more months to go. And if you're someone that wants to be ahead of this, not just watching it, but actively using it, understanding it, building it, the AR Profit Boardroom is where I break down all this stuff in practical, actionable terms, real use cases, real workflows, the stuff that actually moves the needle for businesses and creators. Every week, with the people who are doing it, not just talking about it. The link is inside the comments description, or you can go to the aiprofitboardroom.com. Now, let me leave you with this. There's a moment in technology where the most people who are paying close attention can see the shape of what's coming before most people do. Before the mainstream headlines catch up, before the LinkedIn posts start, before the business podcasts do the AI is changing everything episode that they will absolutely do in 18 months again, right? Before that cycle repeats. We're in that moment right now. And the thing that strikes me most about the Anthropic story is not the Pentagon drama. It's not the number one app store ranking. It's not even the product velocity, as impressive as it is. It's a company in the most competitive, most capital intensive, most strategically important technology race in human history, looked at a $200 million government contract and said, not like this. And then the public stood up and said, we see you. That's a signal, not just about Anthropic, about what people want from technology, about what they want from the companies building it, about the kind of AI they actually want in their lives and their businesses. They want it to be trustworthy. They want it to be genuinely useful. They want it to be on their side, not on the side of the advertisers, not on the side of whoever writes the biggest check, on their side. And right now, Anthropic is the company that's building that with more features, more performance, more open access, more principle, and more momentum than anyone else. Pay attention because this is the one to watch. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't already, check out the AI Profit Boardroom, link in the comments description, or just go to the AIProfitBoardroom.com. Alibaba's AI just shocked the world. So, 1,000 people lined up outside a tech company in China to get software installed on their laptops, not to get a new phone, not to get a product for free, not to meet a celebrity, to get an AI agent. Engineers from the company's cloud unit helped students, retirees, and office workers set up a piece of free open source software called OpenClaw. And when I say 1,000 people, I mean a literal queue outside the door, stretching down the street in Shenzhen in March of 2026. And here's the thing that stopped me cold when I read that. Most of those people had never written a single line of code in their lives, right? They were retirees, office workers, students, regular people who heard about this thing called an AI agent and decided they needed it right now, today, enough to stand in line for it. That's not a tech trend. It's a cultural movement. And if you're in the West, if you're building a business, running a team, or just trying to figure out where AI is going, I need you to understand what's actually happened here, because this isn't a story about China. It's a story about what happens when AI becomes so cheap, so powerful, and so accessible that it stops being a tool for tech companies and starts being something every single person on earth can use. And Alibaba is right at the center of it. Let me walk you through exactly what they've built, what it means, and why you need to pay attention right now. Let's start with Qwen, because that's the foundation. Qwen is Alibaba's family of AI models that's been downloaded over 300 million times worldwide. And developers have created more than 100,000 derivative models of Hugging Face alone, right, for Qwen. It's pretty insane. Now, let me put that in perspective for you. That means 100,000 different versions of Alibaba's AI built by other people for free, customized for everything from legal documents to video games to customer service bots. That's not a product, that's an ecosystem. Alibaba CEO Eddie Wu has said that the goal is to turn Qwen into the operating system of the AI era. So you can see how fast they're moving here and how clear they are on their vision, right? Think about what that means. When Microsoft built Windows, they didn't just sell software, they became the thing that every other piece of software runs on. They controlled the layer that everything else depended on. That's the bet Alibaba is making with Qwen. Don't sell the model, give away the model, become the operating system, and it's working. Now, here's where I need to give you some history, because the speed of what's happening right now is impossible to understand without knowing where we were even 12 months ago. A year ago, Chinese AI models were considered second tier. If you were a serious developer, you were using OpenAI or Anthropic. Chinese models were cheaper but weaker. That was a conventional wisdom. That was the story the industry told itself. Then DeepSeek dropped in January 2025 and cracked the world open. Suddenly, the idea that American labs had a permanent, insurmountable lead looked much shakier. The question wasn't, is Chinese AI catching up anymore? The question became, are they already here? And then Alibaba spent the last 12 months answering that question. Qwen 3, released in April 2025, claims to match and in some cases outperform the best models from Google and OpenAI, and was trained on 36 trillion tokens, right? Double the training data of its predecessor. The flagship model, Qwen 3, 235B, A22B, achieves competitive results in coding, maths, and general benchmarks against some of the other models. That's the scorecard. Those are the names they're benchmarking against, right? But the raw benchmark numbers, as impressive as they are, aren't actually doing most of the story, right? The most important part of the story is what Alibaba decided to do with these models after they built them. They gave them away. So almost all of the Qwen models are released under the Apache 2.0 license. That's the gold standard of open source. It means you can download it, use it, modify it, build a business on top of it, and you don't pay Alibaba a single model ever, right? Think about what that means. Free open source models coming out of China, world leading and changing the world, right? The new flagship open weight model, Qwen 3.5397B A17B, packs 397 billion total parameters, but activates only 17 billion per token. And Alibaba claims it decodes 19 times faster than its previous trillion parameter flagship, whilst costing 60% less to run. 19 times faster, 60% cheaper, and free to download. Now, let me give you an analogy. Imagine you're running a car company and a competitor shows up who gives away cars, good cars, fast, reliable cars for free. And they're doing it because they make money selling gas and roads and the insurance that those cars need to function. That's the play, right? That the model is the car, the cloud infrastructure and services that enterprises need to actually run the models at scale. That's the gas and the roads. Alibaba is committed to spending at least 380 billion yuan, roughly $53 billion, over 3 years on AI and cloud infrastructure. $53 billion. That's not a company hedging its bets against AI. That's a company betting the entire house. And the strategy is working. Alibaba's cloud revenue in its second quarter surged 34% year over year, driven by AI workloads, putting it on an annual revenue run rate of more than $22 billion. AI related revenue has grown at triple digits for 9 consecutive quarters, 9 quarters in a row, triple digit growth. That's not a good year. That's a fundamental shift in what the business is. But here's what I find even more interesting than the cloud revenue numbers. Here's the thing that most people are missing when they look at Alibaba's AI strategy. It's not just about models, it's about agents. During the Lunar New Year, users placed nearly 200 million one sentence orders through the Qwen app, including food delivery, automated discount application, and payment processing via Alibaba and Taobao. 200 million one sentence orders. Someone opened an app, typed something like order me dinner, and the AI handled everything else. Found the restaurant, applied the discount, made the payment, confirmed the order without the person doing anything except describing what they wanted. That's not a chatbot, that's an AI agent, and it's working right now. It's being used for millions of orders. Now, there's a crucial difference here, and I want you to make sure you really get it, right? So, a chatbot answers questions. An agent takes actions. A chatbot is like having a really smart librarian. An agent is like having an employee who can actually go and do the thing you need done. The shift from chatbots to agents is the single biggest transition happening in AI right now. And Alibaba has built in toward this for years, right? Which brings us to OpenClaw. Now, OpenClaw wasn't built by Alibaba, obviously. OpenClaw is a free and open source autonomous AI agent developed by Austrian programmer Peter Steinberger, right? It's an autonomous AI agent that can execute tasks via LLMs using messaging apps as its main user interface. So it can go off and just do stuff like, for example, I don't know, find me the top 10 best restaurants in Bangkok, or go through my email and pull out every invoice from the last 30 days. And OpenClaw bots run locally and designed to integrate with external large language models, such as Claude, DeepSeek, or one of OpenAI's GPT models, including, of course, Qwen. OpenClaw is now one of the fastest growing repos on GitHub, overtaking React, Python, and Linux in the starred list. That's an extraordinary sentence. Three of the most foundational pieces of software in the world, projects that have been built over decades by millions of contributors. And OpenClaw, which barely existed 6 months ago, has more stars on GitHub than any of them. But the American story is nothing compared to what happened in China. On a Friday afternoon in March, nearly 1,000 people lined up outside of Tencent's headquarters in Shenzhen to get a piece of software installed on their laptops. Engineers from the company's cloud unit helped students, retirees, and office workers deploy OpenClaw. Experimenting with agentic AI has become a nationwide frenzy in China, driving market rallies as investors look to profit from growing AI adoption. There are hats. There are install parties. Engineers have found a new business charging 500 yuan, about $72, to install OpenClaw on site. And then, and this is my favorite detail of the entire story, China's OpenClaw craze took an ironic turn when social media platforms were flooded with paid services offering to uninstall the AI agent after users initially paid to have it installed. People paid $43 to uninstall something they'd already paid to install. That's how fast it's moved. That's how far ahead of this infrastructure the enthusiasm got. Some local governments are even offering subsidies worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to companies with approved OpenClaw projects. The Chinese government subsidizing an Austrian programmer's open source side project because they saw it as the on ramp to the agentic AI future they want to build. Now, Alibaba saw all of this happening and made a move. Alibaba launched a dedicated mobile app called JVS Claw that helps iOS and Android smartphone users without coding knowledge to install and deploy OpenClaw within minutes. Without coding knowledge, that's the key phrase here. You don't need to know what a command line looks like or what it is. You don't need to understand what API keys are or JSON files are or any of the technical plumbing that used to be required. You open an app on your phone, you press a button, you have an AI agent. Baidu introduced an Android app for OpenClaw, and other players like Tencent and Minimax are also competing to offer OpenClaw services. So now you have the biggest tech companies in China in a race to see who can most easily get AI agents in the hands of the most non-technical people. That's a competition. Not who has the best enterprise dashboard, not who has the best benchmark marks. It's who can get grandma set up with an AI agent fastest? That's a very kind of different ways, right? That's a very different kind of race. And I want you to sit with that a second, because if you're watching this from the United States or Europe or anywhere in the West and you're thinking, okay, that's China, that's different, I would push back on that. The underlying technology is the same. The models are the same. The open source licenses mean anyone, anywhere on earth can use this. And what China is showing us right now is what happens when you remove the friction from AI agent adoption completely. Now, let me talk about what this actually means for the model quality, because I've been throwing around some big numbers and I want to make sure I'm being honest with you about what's real and what's benchmarking theater. The flagship Qwen 3.5 open weight model contains 397 billion parameters, utilizing efficient architecture with 17 billion active parameters, and the release introduced native multimodal capabilities with a context window of 1 million tokens in its hosted version. Let's just translate that into plain English. 397 parameters, but only 17 billion active at any given moment. It's like a massive library where you only need to pull the specific books relevant to your question. You're not hauling the whole library at every single time. You're just grabbing what you need. That makes it dramatically faster and cheaper to run the models that activate everything at one time. And it's free. Now, I want to be honest with you, because these are Alibaba's self-reported benchmarks, and every AI company's self-reported benchmarks should be looked at with skepticism. A study by ChartGen AI and 20 data visualization tasks showed GPT 5.2 scoring 178 out of 200 versus 163 out of 200 for Qwen 3.5, but at 10 times the cost. 10 times the cost. So for better performance at most real-world tasks, most people would never notice. That's a trade-off. And for 99% of use cases, Qwen is actually good enough and free. Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky raised eyebrows when he admitted the company used Alibaba's open source Qwen model to power its customer service agent, saying it's very good. It's also fast and cheap. Brian Chesky from Airbnb, one of the most recognizable consumer companies on earth, running their customer service on a free Chinese AI model and saying it out loud. That's the signal. It's not that Qwen is secretly better than everything else in every way. It's that Qwen is good enough, fast enough, and free. And for a business trying to build AI powered services at scale, good enough, fast enough, and free beats slightly better and expensive every time. So that's it. That's basically the whole of Alibaba. The Qwen model is super powerful. OpenClaw is accelerating it. China is loving open source free models right now. And the question I keep asking myself, and the question I'll leave you with, is simple. Are you running towards AI, or are you running behind it, right? Because the tools are free, the information is available. The only thing standing between you and having AI agents working for you is deciding that you're going to learn this, that you're going to spend the time to figure it out. And that decision is on you. Qwen is free, OpenClaw is free, the knowledge of how to use them, that's what's valuable now. And that's what separates the people who are going to ride the wave from the people who are going to wonder what happened next. And if you want to be in the first group, you know where to find us. Join us in the AI Profit Boardroom. Link in the comments description, or go to the AIprofitboardroom.com. This is my AI automation community that helps you save time, scale, and learn AI automation with practical, actionable new tutorials every single day. And you can connect with me personally too. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye-bye.